So, I've had a fairly eventful last 24 hours. I got the final revisions, edits, whatnot back from my thesis advisor at about 2:30 yesterday afternoon, and that gave me time to finish up, putting everything in, organizing the spacing of my whole dissertation, putting the figures in where they need to go, doing my table of contents, and converting it into a PDF so that I could take it and print it fairly easily. All in all, it ended up being it ended up being 253 pages of blood, sweat, and tears that I've been working on for quite a while now. So that was one awesome thing to kind of at least get that printed and bound. I made 3 copies of it, one for each of my committee members, and sent that off and came home. I didn't finish doing that until, like 2 in the morning. Came home, got a little bit of sleep because I had divorce court this morning. So I had to go to divorce court and submit my settlement for the dissolution of my marriage, and the judge accepted everything. It was basically just me and my lawyer up in front of the judge. It was a default case because my ex-husband never responded to the papers that we served to him. So then it went into a default back in January, and he had 6 months to file some kind of response before the actual, final date where we would, settle things up. And, he basically is just dropped off the face of the earth in that department. So we got to just submit what we felt was, fair division of the debt and the assets. And so the judge granted, he approved everything. He said it seemed reasonable, and I got the dissolution of my marriage officially granted, and the official okay and go ahead to change my name back so that I can reclaim my maiden name, my birth name, the name I was given when I was born, my family name. So that kind of makes me happy to have those 2 things kind of knocked out, all in a 1-day period. It's consider this a double D celebration today. Printing the dissertation and finalizing the divorce. So that makes me feel relieved. And so I have 5 days until my actual defense of my dissertation, which is, of course, the public lecture that I will be giving on the 19th to present the body of work that I've been working on for the past 5 or 6 years, and which I will then subsequently have to defend. I will have to sit there and leave it open for scrutiny and defend everything that I've done and be able to justify my experiments and my logic and any rationale that I've applied to not only the experimental design, but then the conclusions that I've drawn upon, and then be able to, speculate future directions, what my work has contributed to the field. So that'll be interesting. By now, it would seem like I'm the expert. I've been working on this so hard. And obviously, I can't know everything. So I'm sure there'll be questions that I won't be able to answer. And as much as I dislike saying I don't know, it's better to say you don't know if you don't know than rambling out of your ass just to have an answer for answer's sake. Because that's when the committee sharks will start to smell blood in the water, and that's when you could potentially screw yourself, if you start rambling about something you're not so positive on. It's like, it's a defense of your dissertation. Stick to the facts, stick to what you know, only speculate on things for which you can argue based on things that you do know are true, and that, based on A and B, then we could hypothesize C, given that rationale, but to not just throw out ideas without any kind of basis of support, in terms of their feasibility. And I notice I do that in conversations sometimes, and I'll just kind of like stop halfway through the sentence and just be like, you know what? To be honest, I honestly don't know what I'm talking about. I'll start to realize I'm talking out of my ass, and I don't, these are just speculations that I have, and they're not really based on any kind of evidence. And so I have to watch myself and make sure I don't do that in my defense, because, the defense isn't about, my theories. It's about what I know to be true. And, because this is a scientific dissertation, so that's based on data and literature and evidence, things that we know, things that are reproducible. I try to address upon that in my final conclusions of my dissertation. There's 200 pages of writing, sifting through the massive amounts of literature that contributed to, background information and rationale for my work. I had about 500 references in my bibliography at the end of my dissertation, and trying to find, what is the truth amongst this massive amount of literature. And when it was all said and done, there was only like a handful of papers, probably maybe like 20, where I found consistency amongst those studies, where I was able to really tease out what is the valid biological effect in the system that I was studying. And it was just amazing, having to go through all that information to find, a one paragraph conclusion that ties it all together. It's interesting, like scaling, like in biology, you'll scale down to understand, the specific mechanisms of how a protein works, but then you have to take a broader step back into, okay, so how does that protein fit into, a signaling pathway? How does the signaling pathway fit into the function of a cell? How does that cell's function fit into, the greater system that it's a part of? And then that system, how does that fit into the body, and blah, 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 blah. And so you can scale back, up or down either way, and try to trying to understand the details that will explain a small thing, but remembering to bring it back out to the bigger picture so that you understand how it all fits together. Because, that's one thing that I got so sick of early on in graduate school was, just, you read a lot of papers, a lot of published articles that they're just so detailed about some tiny specific thing, like a transcription factor or, tiny molecule that modifies DNA, and they don't really bring it back out so you, at the end of it, think, okay, why do I care about this again? I mean, I understand it's important for mechanism and everything, but I don't know, I'm kind of like a bigger picture type of scientist. I like to know the details, but I like to also remember how to put it back into the perspective of the broader question. And the tricky part is not getting lost amidst all those details of scaling down, and then trying to get your way back up to the bigger picture, finding your way down and then finding your way back up. My boss always says, the devil's in the details, and it's so true. Anyways, I just, I'm running out of time here, so wanted to just let you guys know what's going on. I've got 5 days until my defense, and I'll probably post another video after it's all said and done.